You see Francesca's got one note on her paper. Whereas I've got 5 notes. So.
I got mad notes.
Okay. How much of me has to become this microphone? A lot, or it's okay? It's okay? It's fine. All right, that's kind of cumbersome. Well, I guess I was asked to offer a few thoughts on notes just like everyone else, and everyone clearly has been touched in one way or another by the long arc of Notes' many contributions, deeply intellectual and political and personal. And so struggling to grapple with what does Midnight Notes mean on a large scale. And there's, I think, a variety of answers to that. I certainly join Craig and the rest of Team Colors in congratulating Midnight Notes for 30 years, which is an absolute phenomenal achievement on the left. And also perhaps be the first to wish Midnight Notes a happy birthday or a 30th anniversary or whatever. But it's absolutely an honor to be here and participating in this celebration too. I was touched by Peter's comments earlier about, well, if Midnight Notes in its long history has been likened to a family, it's been a dysfunctional family. And the desire to move beyond that mode of interaction. And I'm certainly not the only one who sees elements of all families as dysfunctional and have struggled in my own ways, I'm sure all of us have, to escape the family in one way or another. And so it's not like a family that I sort of I feel when I'm around Midnight Notes, but something closer to what Peter's alluding to, which is a sense of class in common. And I think that's what's really been a powerful moment for me. Every encounter with Midnight Notes' material, certainly textually in the beginning, but then, like I said, through organizing a space and through meeting folks who are now part of Team Colors and a circle of friends around them, getting to meet Sylvia and George, and then Peter and Monty, and a handful of other folks who've been loosely the constellation of Midnight Notes. It's really helped me to understand the best of my class, and to help me think about our class in common from a very, very deeply personal and relational way. Well, so I guess the other thing I'd like to say is maybe just to draw attention to the space that we're in now. The Brecht Forum is also celebrating three decades in existence. It's turning 35 this year. And it conceives of itself as a movement space. And over the last 35 years, a lot of the history that we've charted out in cursory form today, it's seen a lot of different faces of the movement. It's seen a lot of ups and downs and has had to adjust and also respond and also take initiative in a lot of what the Brecht Forum has sort of situated around it. And it occurred to me that Midnight Notes, too, is a movement space in a certain sense. It's been helpful for me to think about Midnight Notes as operating on a handful of different levels. Certainly it's a journal, which is one way in which many of us have encountered Midnight Notes. Certainly it's a collective. Certainly it's a circle of friends. It is a political organization in one way or another, and much to Monty's consternation, it absolutely is a network. And so it exists on all these different levels, and I think a lot of the power that is not just political insight, but again, relationships, has really traversed all of those levels. And I think that's exactly what that's how movement spaces are organized. And so that's one thing I want to sort of offer as a recognition of Midnight Notes' work, is that it's been, if we analyze it across these 5 different levels, we can sort of see all the different ways the energies and powers have been organized. think it's incredible. It's certainly drawn me in. Another thing I want to draw attention to, I've also tried to do a sort of careful review of Mena-Notes' material, and it's taken a year to do. And so by the time I got to the closest stuff, and certainly promissory notes, I began to forget the core lessons of Strange Victories, the first ones. But throughout, my experience reading Mena-Notes material is it's absolutely full of a sense of daring and humor. And especially in the early issues, I would laugh out loud at least once or twice, or I wouldn't know what to do with my body, and my mind would just absolutely reel. It was, Strange Victories ends with a big block text. It's your turn. I think the next issue, there's a deeply buried in the footnotes is a contest for some prize that would be offered for any Marxologist who could spot the obscure quote that is in the text. Footnote 21, I think. Later, there's an announcement of another contest. A 3,000 word essay, I think, explaining someone's best answer why we continue to accept work and exploitation.
Never got a reply, by the way.
That's maybe best kept as a secret, because the next issue announces we haven't received adequate replies, and therefore up to the ante from $100 to $108 to keep up with inflation. So on and on and on. I mean, these texts were absolutely a pleasure to read, which again is, I think, something to be celebrated in our leftist milieus. We're used to cranking out cantankerous polemics and things like that. So it's an absolute pleasure to read these materials, and then also to draw our attention again to all the images and different creatures and figures attacking the text, and all the ways in which it's absolutely incredibly difficult to read Mena-Notes' material, purposely so. So I want to draw that out as another thing to celebrate today. And of course, also throughout all of these materials has been an absolute amazing array of tools to analyze the capitalist class situation. And these tools have been brought out over 30 years in a ton of different contexts. Mena-Notes, I think, would self-consciously identify themselves as part of a broadly conceived anti-capitalist movement, and has been very comfortable and very brazen in criticizing, as Greg pointed to, a lot of leftist formulations about this anti-capitalist struggle. And so this anti-capitalist movement that Mena-Notes has situated itself in has taken on a lot of different forms. For example, we talked about this morning, the anti-nuclear movement. There were issues dedicated to the first anti-war movement, the anti-globalization movement, and certainly the Zapatistas, but also the entire global South, the movements in the global South and the structural adjustment period, and the anti-enclosure movements, and then certainly the new anti-war movement, and to today, and back again. I mean, these are sort of recyclings of all these different movements that we sort of come to today again. And so throughout this period, I guess the most powerful thing that I found is a way to understand my own life. I mean, I've got now 30 years of material that I can use to understand the class struggle in my lifetime. And it's absolutely indispensable. I mean, I don't know if that's something that registers with the older folks who have lived a lifetime prior to buckling down and writing these texts. But these texts start. This analysis starts where loosely my life starts, and so it's been an absolute amazing resource to be able to reconstruct the world I live in. And I don't know how I would do it without it. And so I mean, it speaks to some of the new visioning that George mentioned and Billy mentioned too.